Peter Barry Chowka is an American journalist, political analyst and broadcaster who's been reporting on politics in a variety of media, both mainstream and alternative, for 5 decades. And I'm pleased to say joins me now. Morning, Peter.
Matt, it's great to be with you this morning.
Great to have you on. Now, we've just heard exactly what an inauguration is. You've worked through a fair few of them. So is this one going to be any different today, Peter?
Oh, absolutely. It's historic not only because it is an inauguration, but history is being made in another significant way because we're witnessing the most amazing political comeback in American history with Donald Trump. Only once before has an American president lost his re-election bid and then come back to assume office 4 years later. So this is the second time that's happening. But of course, in the past 4 years, when Donald Trump has been out of office, everything has been thrown at him by both the mainstream media here, most of them anyway, by academia, Hollywood, popular culture, and what we call lawfare, that is the use of the Department of Justice and some of these local prosecutors to hurl all kinds of charges at him, which we were told was going to probably get him in jail so he wouldn't be able to run for re-election. Well, those charges, those cases have all but evaporated. And meanwhile, Donald Trump won re-election by the largest mandate, raw popular vote, winning that for the first time a Republican like him won in 20 years. So he is sitting high and mighty right now, and that has, of course, changed the mood a lot here in the United States politically as we go forward today.
Yeah, you mentioned, as I say, it's been a rocky few years, as you say, being arrested and all of that, and as you say, one of the greatest comebacks. And he's been keen to let us know, I guess, his plans on making changes as soon as possible. So, what do you think we can expect from him in these early days?
Well, he's been very clear this time around. By the way, he's had a lot of experience between the first 4 years, which were chaotic and ill-conceived. He didn't really know what he was getting into. In fact, he thought he was going to lose the election in 2016, so he was unprepared. Well, now he's had 4 years as president and 4 years to run for president again and get free of all his charges, to plan his second administration. And he has many of his people in place now to serve in the cabinet and otherwise, and they agree with his agenda. Now, here's what he has said he's going to be doing either on day one later today or soon thereafter. Take immediate action to close the border and start to remove many of the illegal immigrants who have entered the country during the past 4 years, starting with over 700,000 of them who have gone through the judicial process and who have been ordered to leave the country, but they're still out there untouched during the President Biden administration. He's promised to take action on the economy to reverse the record inflation and high interest rates of the past 4 years. With the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as Secretary of Health and Human Services, and of course RFK Jr. is a Democrat joining this administration, Trump promises to begin to reform big medicine from away more from treatment to a prevention model by prioritizing healthy diets and lifestyles and removing toxins from food. He's also focused on expanding peace in the Middle East and restarting the Abraham Accords from his first administration. And of course, the peace accord now between Israel and Hamas is in some quarters being attributed to President Trump imminently taking power, because he said that if Hamas didn't deal with Israel, well, to paraphrase, there would be all hell to pay, but we shall see if that pans out. Briefly again, he's promised to make America energy independent again, to end regulations like banning gasoline-powered vehicles and mandating electric vehicles, banning gas stoves and certain kinds of light bulbs, all these things that have made life miserable for a lot of people, quite frankly. And finally, he's promised to end the corruption of federal law enforcement agencies that have used lawfare to target political enemies, including him, he says, instead of targeting criminals. So it's a very ambitious agenda, but because he did win a significant election victory this time around, as opposed to his narrow victory in 2016, he seems to have a lot of the people behind him. And of course, he has both houses of Congress now, the Republican Senate and House of Representatives. So we shall see. It's going to be an interesting time ahead in any case.
Yeah, I mean, we're over here, Peter, reading a lot about it on our website, and obviously going to be following it closely today on the BBC. But I guess, what's the atmosphere like, amongst people? How are people feeling about Trump returning to the White House?
Well, he has a tremendous amount of energy, and I think that is reflected in not only his supporters, but in many people who he brought to support him from the independent, mainstream, middle of the road, and even some Democrats. So you have right now several 100,000 people who have assembled in Washington, D.C., where the swearing in will be taking place. But as you've been reporting, the outdoor ceremony which would have accommodated up to 1 million people who wanted to watch, and 250,000 of them have tickets for a special place to watch. Well, it's had to be moved indoors to a small venue in the United States Capitol, which can accommodate only about 600 or 700 people. So there's a lot of disappointed people on the streets, although I've been reading about what the feeling is there, and people don't seem to be that disappointed. They've paid for hotel rooms, for transportation, gone through hoops to be there, but they're just happy to be in the same place where he will be inaugurated, because there is this sense of optimism. Now, that's not to say that the loyal opposition, I guess as you would call it, is not there. The country is pretty much split 50-50, with a little more now favoring Trump and the Republicans, and that's even according to a New York Times poll 2 days ago, which found that the positions that Donald Trump is supporting are now endorsed by a majority of Americans, even some Democrats. So, but it's very upbeat. And of course, later today, as we say here, the rubber will meet the road when he actually takes power and has to produce. Talk is cheap. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on him and his cabinet and the Senate and the House of Representatives to actually solve these problems, some of which I've listed that he wants to correct. So, the game isn't over yet. And I would finally say in this regard that the opponents of President Trump, the Democrat Party, the loyal opposition, and some in the mainstream media, they've been lying low. There's sort of a honeymoon period between the election in November and when the new president, whoever he or she is inaugurated on January 20th. And it's kind of quiet. But the Democrats are not going to roll over and play dead, nor is the mainstream media that is opposed to President Trump. So, as I said, the game isn't over yet. But I'll tell you, as a journalist, it's going to be a fascinating 4 years ahead. And in my decades of covering presidential politics, we have never seen anything like this, like Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and everything's happened in the last 4 years.
Absolutely. Well, Peter, we will look to the US with interested eyes as well. But thank you, mate. Thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure.
Thank you. That's Peter Barry Chowka there, who is an American journalist and political analyst and broadcaster, joining us with his thoughts on Donald Trump's inauguration today.